Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first episode of The Sense. I'm here with the co-host Ben. Essentially, guys, today we're going to be talking about Dardoch and Xmithie and the trade between Immortals and CLG. And after that, we're going to be discussing the Riot situation and how they're going to be moving on to franchising in the year 2018. So, without further ado, let's get started. So Ben, you want to take the reins on this one? Let's get it going.
Okay, so we're going to be talking about a trade that happened in Professional League of Legends. To get the details out of the way, I guess the short way of explaining it is Counter Logic Gaming and Immortals swap junglers. So that's Jake, Xmithie, Puchero to Immortals from Counter Logic Gaming and Immortals jungler Joshua, Dardoch, Harnett to Counter Logic Gaming. And there's a lot of buzz right now because Dardoch and Xmithie are two very, very different junglers, and Immortals and CLG are kind of two different teams in two different places. So right now we're talking about what we think the trade will bring to both teams, and what are the benefits and kind of non-benefits of having each of these junglers swap teams. Just to get it out of the way, the reason that this is such an issue is because the jungler Dardoch has known to be very toxic, very, very hard to work with him in his past teams, including Team Liquid and Immortals. So the question is for you is, first of all, what do you think of the trade? And second of all, which team do you think won the trade? And do you think Dardoch will kind of miss his whole toxicity? I'm just going to go ahead and throw out there that I think, before you get into it, I think that coming from Immortals, right, Dardoch, his roster included Flame in the top lane, obviously Dardoch in the jungle, Pobelter in the mid lane, Cody Sun and Ole as the AD carry and support, with Pobelter in the mid lane. And I think by far and away Dardoch was the best player. And I think when you know that you're the best player and you're constantly told that you're the best player, that your ego will kind of get ahead of you a little bit. So I think coming to CLG, where you have Darshan in the top lane, he's okay. Huhi in the mid lane, which is, again, he's okay. But then you move down to the bot lane,
right,
and you compare Stixxay and Aphromoo to Cody Sun and Ole. It's like Aphromoo and Stixxay is considered like the third or fourth best AD carry in the LCS. So where Cody Sun's probably, in my opinion, the worst AD carry in the LCS next to Keith.
Right.
How do you think he's going to fare with this new environment, Dardoch?
So overall, I think Dardoch will, off the start, right, you have this honeymoon phase with every team you join, and that's just overall across the board with any sport, traditional or esport you play. Off the start, on paper, things look great for CLG and Dardoch, right? Off the start, I think he's going to do great, right? I really think the honeymoon stage will represent what the whole purpose of the trade was, right? Will show why we traded Xmithie for Dardoch on skill, just a skill-based point. Essentially, I think he's going to bring a lot of just individual skill that I feel like Xmithie lacked towards the end of his time at CLG. But at the end of the day, I do think he will perform well in the beginning. However, I think the bigger question here is, how is it going to plan out when it gets to the middle of the season and when things start not going so great for CLG, right? I think that's very important. You start to see how in previous teams, Dardoch tends to tilt or have an attitude problem when things start going south, right? When they start losing. Team Liquid is a perfect example. They started losing, right? And I think it reached the point where in his mind, it's like, why do I want to play with these guys? I'm tired of this. I don't want to lose. I'm sick of it, right? So I think it's going to be very interesting to see how he manages losses in CLG and how he adapts to, you're not going to win every game, right? So how do you adapt to that? How do you get better instead of being toxic? How do you become more constructive with your team? Overall, I think it's a skill-based trade. I really think that's the reason for the trade. I don't think there's any other point for it. Obviously, if you look at maturity, it's obviously Xmithie has the experience. It's obviously he's way more mature than Dardoch. So to me, it's just this is a skill-based trade. COG came on top. Looking at it just from skill, Dardoch is overall the better jungler. And I really do think COG will do good as long as Dardoch, towards the middle of the season or whenever they start losing, is able to control his emotions, right, and use all that energy in a positive way. Do you think at the end of the day, do you think Immortals kind of got the bad trade, or was it almost like they were just, oh well, we got to deal with this because maybe Xmithie brings the level of professionalism that they need, right? What do you think on that?
So we talked about this off stream and kind of last night, but the way that the jungle is kind of adapted nowadays in season 7, I think that there are a couple of junglers right now, Xmithie and of course Meteos, that are what in League of Legends what we call very farm efficient. And what that basically means is, for those of you guys that don't really play League of Legends, essentially they were very, very, very involved in farming, and they wanted to farm and farm and farm. But nowadays, the way that the game works is the laners are relying on the jungler to provide pressure to their lane. And I think that's something that Xmithie is not very good at in team fights. Team fighting is usually like 20 minutes to the end of the game, sometimes even earlier, like 12 or 13 minutes. I think Xmithie has good mechanics, but as far as early game jungling, I think he lacks a lot compared to Dardoch, and I think that's something that Immortals was pretty good at last year, was their early game pressure, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how they kind of change their style. I've seen teams this season like FlyQuest, for example, that they tried extremely hard just to get through the early game and then get to late game, and the way that FlyQuest won so many of their games is because they were able to get to that team fight, and of course of high shot calling abilities, they were able to kind of force the issue in team fights and Baron fights and getting picks and stuff like that as a unit. But for them, it was just like, let's draft a late game team composition. So that's why you saw a lot of things like, they pulled out Vayne, for example, or Twitch. It was like hyper carry, AD carry, who took, for those of you guys who don't know, it's a champion that essentially farms and farms and farms and builds up until about 25 minutes is the power spike, and then they can just start smashing everybody. And what they did was FlyQuest started drafting these these late game compositions. So what I think Immortals will have to do this season is they're just going to have to survive the early game with Xmithie. And I think Xmithie is just not a very good early game jungler. I've watched him play solo queue before, and I don't think he's still not a very good early game jungler compared to the likes of Svenskeren, who's he's okay. He's better than Xmithie. The likes of Contracts, to the likes of even Dardoch. I think that they're, if you look at even Peanut from SKT, it's a different region, but like the Meteos type jungling, where it's all early game oriented, is something that's very harmful. And obviously, that I'm a coach, and when I was in the head coaching position, when I was analyzing, I was pushing hard towards aggressive early game, and I truly believe that the game, I think if a team executes their game plan, they can win in the early game. And I think that's something that Dardoch does very well, and I think that's something that Dardoch can excel in that Xmithie won't. So just for that reason alone, I think that CLG wins the trade, just because Immortals now, they go from having Dardoch, where they played a very slow game, late game oriented, to Xmithie, who's a very slow jungler. It's going to be very hard for them to adapt to the new changes. Where CLG, it's going to be a little bit. It's very, let's just say it's easier to go from a slower game to a faster game than a faster game to a slower game.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So I think it's going to take a couple of weeks, but I definitely think CLG is going to do very well with the new strategy that they're going to be able to draft early game and mid game compositions, where I think Immortals is literally, it's going to have to be, for their wins, it's going to be 35 to 45 minute games for them every time if they're going to take the win.
Yeah, to add a little bit more to that, when you touched on Xmithie being, kind of like that old school type jungler, I think this is something that you see across the board, right? I think this is why the Meteos fell off. Why some would say Xmithie's has fallen off, right? This new wave of jungling, the whole aggressive and invading and making sure that you get your team ahead is very, very important now, right? Contrast is a perfect example, right? This new talent that came in out of nowhere, Challenger scene from Cloud9, right? Cloud9 Challenger. I think it's really interesting to see how the jungle alone has almost cut off a bunch of players' careers, because it's changed so drastically in the past couple of seasons. It's going to be interesting how to see how Immortals adapts to this new, quote unquote new form of jungling, right? With Xmithie being, very different and being more of a heavy jungler and more of a, I guess you would say, team oriented, right? Not really trying to carry the game necessarily, right? More like I'm here, I'm gonna farm and try to get maybe a little bit ahead, but for the most part, my sole goal is to make sure that I don't get behind and that I play everything, just calm and collective, right?
Let me just clarify. I definitely think they're not going to lose every game. Like just because you're playing the more farm-oriented team fighting-oriented gameplay doesn't mean you're still not going to win. But if you're going up against, if it's going to be Xmithie versus Contracts, we could really see kind of a struggle for Xmithie to kind of keep up with Contracts in a sense. Obviously, I think he can, but at the same time, when you're going against, especially even the CLG versus Immortals matchup, when CLG is going to be playing a much faster game, I think Xmithie is going to really, really fall behind. And I think, Immortals is going to be kind of lackluster in shot calling as well because, CLG has Aphromoo do all their shot calling with some from Huhi and Darshan, but like you said earlier, like Xmithie is a leader and he has plenty of experience, MSIs and Worlds and stuff. However, I think that Immortals is really gonna struggle in the beginning, kind of figuring out what kind of style they want to play because not only as we just discussed that Xmithie is going to be a late game jungler or a farm oriented jungler, it's going to be hard for Immortals to kind of adapt to because Dardoch did most of the shot calling for Immortals, so it's going to be interesting. I believe I read that they're going to be going to create a boot camp before summer split starts. So I'm sure they're going to get a lot of their kinks out there as far as like their style of play. However, I really think that they're going to do. I think CLG wins the trade.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. My thing is I think maybe Immortals went in with the mentality of let's get this jungler because he has essentially what we've never had, right? Previous, the old Immortals, right? When Rainover and Huni were on the roster, that roster was a very, some would even say, young team, right? I don't think there's ever been a veteran really on the team, and I think maybe this is what Immortals maybe was looking for, right? I think maybe purposefully they were like, here, take this young guy that we're willing to jeopardize, or not jeopardize, but lose his skill over somebody that can bring more depth, right? More experience, more of a mental aspect, right? Maybe that's what they're looking for, and if they are, maybe I guess in that regard, maybe they did win the trade. But overall, on paper, yeah, I agree. CLG wins the trade just skill wise, and Dardoch overall has been, ever since he came on to the pro scene, I think he's been a great jungler, and he's proven himself in a matter of a year, right? It's interesting to see how this has worked out for him.
The only thing that I see that Immortals could have taken from the trade is that they wanted to just get Dardoch out of there if he was causing issues. Because it doesn't make sense for Immortals because not only is Xmithie falling lower in the tier list, I think you can still put I think at this point you can put Contracts and I think even Svenskeren above. You can put the two of them even above Xmithie by far, and Dardoch too. So
yeah, no, I think that overall, yeah, the only way, like I said, the only way that I feel Immortals wins it is if they truly went in with this trade in mind that they wanted to get a jungler with more experience, despite their skill ability, right? And then maybe like I said, maybe this brings more of a mental maturity that this young team or organization really needs, right? Maybe they've never had somebody with experience, to be honest. So maybe in this mind, they're like, let's get this jungler that has all this experience, and let's try to do it to where we can make a team where it's more based around teamwork, right? I feel like Immortals, when Dardoch was on the team, I think it was more wait for middle to late game or early games to late that Dardoch can carry. A lot of the games that were played and Dardoch was just going off, and those are essentially the games that they would win. So maybe I think this trade was more towards let's trade somebody that can help the team become a better team overall and work together instead of having this jungler that's just going to try to carry.
Yep. And I think Dardoch won't have to carry anymore.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting though. I think it's an interesting trade. But obviously we won't really be able to see what we can't really predict, right? Because obviously, we still have this part of the summer, and trades can still go down, right? So you never know, right? Maybe Immortals does a crazy rebuilding process, which I doubt, but it could happen. But overall, what were your thoughts when you heard about the trade?
Well, the first thing that came out was, because they didn't confirm that Dardoch had been moved to CLG, the first thing that came out was Xmithie has left CLG and joined Immortals. That's the first thing I heard. And for a second, I was just like, how does this make... I mean, it makes sense from the CLG standpoint. They kind of want to, switch their strategy up and become more of an early game team. But it doesn't make sense from Immortals standpoint. The only thing that I was thinking that could have made sense is they just wanted to get Dardoch the hell out of there. And the only way that they could have done that is, they didn't want to pull a jungler from the Challenger Series, or Amateur. So what they decided to do was kind of talk around and see, kind of who was available. And, I think it's pretty obvious that CLG has had since last year's MSI, they had a pretty disappointing summer split last year. And then this spring was pretty disappointing. So I think they were I don't think they were looking to make a move, but I think they were listening to all their options. And, if they thought that they could have gotten Dardoch, then that's kind of what they did. But I think for Immortals, it just doesn't make any sense to kind of downgrade junglers. The only thing that would make sense to me is they are bringing in new kids that they want Xmithie to teach and kind of improve the morale of the team, but also to just get Dardoch out of there. And that was the only option for them. So it just doesn't really, on paper, like behind the scenes, it doesn't make sense why they would.
Doesn't make sense, right? And obviously the release, the article released by COG, I mean, it doesn't really touch up on much stuff, right? It's just essentially saying, hey, Dardoch is on the team. This is what he's going to do, and he's going to make COG a tier-like team now, right?
Because it didn't say what Xmithie, why he left the team, why he left CLG. So the thing is either they paid him, Immortals would offered him a ton of money, or CLG needed to make a change. Immortals put in an offer, and they thought that might as well make a change, and kind of if Dardoch's available, might as well get him, because I don't think there were any other junglers up that were going to be anywhere close to available. I mean, you could argue Svenskeren, but I think Svenskeren's not going anywhere. So.
Right. Yeah. No, my first thoughts were honest. I was pretty surprised. I was like, wow. Yeah. My first concern was like, wow, his attitude. What's gonna happen, right? I think this is my concern, even not being part of CLG at all, just being looking from the outside in. I think it's like, wow, this is a risky, trade. This is a risky player you're investing time in, right, and effort into. I think that was my first impression. Like I was like, I don't know how COG will manage his attitude and how they'll make sure that he doesn't tilt and he doesn't use all this energy and that he has for the game and drive in a negative way. And I think that was my main concern, just his attitude and just see how he reacts to all of, understanding that now it's like, COD is the type of team that doesn't allow that, right? We've seen it throughout the years. They've kind of always been very professional and always made sure that their players were kept in line. So that, like I said, that was my biggest concern, just making sure that COG can keep him in line and make sure that his attitude doesn't get the best of him.
I just think that having the improvement of kind of quality of players that he doesn't think he has to carry anymore.
Right. With that said, you want to transition over to franchising and League of Legends. This is going to be a nice subject, you being, tied to League of Legends very closely and working with, top players, amateur players. What are your thoughts on franchising? So before we go into that, I just want to, for those people that don't know what franchising is or understand essentially what that means for Riot and League of Legends and for the amateur scene in general, I'm going to briefly explain it. Franchising, essentially, for League of Legends, what they want to do, I'll link an article down below where you can find all this information. The same thing with the COG article that was released regarding Dardoch and Xmithie. essentially Riot plan to do franchising. Franchising in a nutshell means that places or spots in the league will be up for sale, right? They will no longer do a challenger scene where people can qualify regardless of if you have money or not. Obviously, if you want to qualify, you still have to pay some money, but for the most part, that will be abolished, right? The whole idea of a challenger scene won't be there regarding trying to qualify to become a professional team. So essentially, it means that the spots will be for sale, meaning that Riot's going to put a price tag on a spot. That's it. You have to either you got the money or you don't. It's very straightforward, right? The article states that essentially this doesn't even guarantee players, teams that are right now in the league, that doesn't guarantee them their spot. So my thing is like, I think they're gonna even to those players, they're gonna sell them their own spots that they already own, right? So essentially, that's what it means. You're gonna pay for your spot, and there will no longer be a challenger scene where you can try to qualify to become a professional player. So that means that the teams that control these spots dictate who gets on the team, who doesn't get on the team, and Riot essentially has a stronghold on how many these teams, and essentially the teams can control what teams come in to the league, right? Based off like the money that is placed on these spots, and it's a very interesting topic. So what's your take on that, Ray? What does this mean for amateur teams and people that are trying to become professional, and for teams that are, we're working so hard, like, trying to go into the challenger scene and try to make a name for themselves, right? To try to become professional, organization.
Yeah. So I just kind of want to kind of expand on what he was saying, because I think you like misinterpreted a little bit. Essentially, what the new franchising system is going to do is it's going to make sure that each team in the league, it's basically abolishing relegations. So every season, it'll be the same 10 teams, right? Of course, spots being purchased are something that's it's going to be like allowed, but there's going to be no more relegation tournament where, we talked about how, a little bit off stream, how we think that, with the removal of the relegation system, that if, for example, if a team like this season, for example, like Envious, like if they go down 0-5, right? Their first 5 matches, they lose them all, and they're 0-5. They could just say, all right, well, let's just pack it up. Let's just kind of improve for next split. Don't worry about it. That's how it will be with franchising. However, right now, how it is they're 0-5, but they still need to fight as hard as they can to make sure they can even stay in the league.
Right. Due to potential teams trying to come up.
That's what the Challenger Series is essentially the winner of the Challenger Series qualifiers will face the teams that are facing relegation from the LCS, and the winner of that match will take the spot. So, for example, this season, Gold Coin United versus TL won. So TL. Wait, I'm not even sure if that's right.
No, it was 2 spots. So it was Team Envious versus
Envious and TL.
Yeah. I think Team Envious either beat United. Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah.
And Team Liquid stays in. So
yeah,
it just gives these challenger teams kind of a hope to get in the LCS. And what Riot is trying to do is they're trying to offer more security. So this is not pertaining to the top 4 teams that there are every split, where it's either Immortals, P1, C9 or TSM, even CLG. Those teams are pretty set, but you move down like FlyQuest, Envious, Team Liquid,
all the low tiers.
Yeah, and it's kind of like, well, now each organization has guaranteed it's kind of like real sports. So, for example, in baseball, a team like the Angels, who aren't very good, right? And they do very poorly. Or the best example I have is, let's take this back like 6 years to when the New Jersey Nets at the time they only won like 8 games in the season, so they were like 8 and whatever. And essentially what happens is nothing happens to them. So
they have the ability to do as bad as they want.
They have the ability to do as bad as they want, and nothing happens to them. They're not getting kicked out of the NBA.
No, they're not.
So it's like, if this was the LCS, then
what is like, this?
what happens?
Yeah.
Like it
Yeah.
just
What does it
enables
mean?
like it just enables teams to kind of just pack it up and kind of go from there. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I like yeah, I might have I might have misinterpreted, but yeah, I agree. Essentially, I think this is just a full on like money move, right? I that's just the best way I kind of look at it. I think it's obvious that they're doing this because they want to bring in more investors, right? And you know, in previous articles that I've read regarding esports and how investors kind of shy away, it's because it's so uncertain, right? What teams will stay in and what teams will stay out, right? Therefore, outside investors are not going to come in and be like, let's invest, because why would we if we are not sure if the team we invest in is going to even be there by the next split? Yeah, that's and I think that's my like my perspective on this. I think it's good, but it's bad, right? Because it neglects a lot of the consequences that come with being a bad team. Team Liquid in this past split, they felt the fire, right? They were a little hair away from being.
I think we're gonna get that into another topic next week about if the double lift situation was justified. You're very, very opinionated about it. Almost
right.
about yelling about it when we had a talk a couple months ago about the whole double lift subbing in for Team Liquid halfway through the season thing, and that's gonna be for another episode. But yeah, like teams now have security. But now this kind of moves into what does this look like now for the amateur scene?
For amateurs, right? I think that's a bigger question at all. So me, yeah.
Like, I work in League of Legends. Like I've coached, I've managed, I manage currently, and working with some top amateurs, even former pros and such. That it's like, well, these guys are kind of like their dreams are kind of smashed because now there's no way for them to. The only way that they're going to get into the LCS is if they're recruited and picked up by either the academy team of one of the LCS teams or like an LCS team, like recruiting them and picking them up. And It's like, well, now there's no way for them to really prove their skills except once a year or twice a year at scouting grounds. So it's like it's just kind of not very fair to the amateurs, but at the same time, I understand why Riot's doing this.
Right, I agree. I think, like I said, I think that's like the bigger question, right? Sorry, let me adjust myself. I think that's the bigger question. It's like, what do they expect for the amateurs to do now, right? And I think there really isn't much, right? If you're not on a college gate team already, or if you're not going to these if you're not getting scouted, what does this mean for a top player, right? I think this kind of destroys the whole idea of an amateur scene, right? The whole idea that now you guys don't get to do anything. You guys are either have to be on a college gate team and potentially get scouted that way, or find a way to go into a tryout for this team that already has a spot, right? There's no more, hey guys, let's make a team that we think is great and let's try to qualify. That's done with, right? That's over with. There's not going to be anything like that. And I think that, like I said, I think it defeats the purpose of having the amateur scene, and it's going to stop the growth from happening, right? Since it's all going to be based on who you know, and if you have somebody in the inside.
I might be out of a job because of this. So.
Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of amateur teams, that are professionals in other esports, I think are gonna feel the pain, right? Because it's like United, right? I think do you really think they're, I would say, respectively, an organization that is starting to break through, that ceiling, but they're not at the point where they can financially, I would assume, right, financially buy a spot, an LCS spot, right? Or else I feel like they would have just done that. So I think this affects not even just overall the amateur scene. I think it affects organizations that are trying to become professional in that esport. And that's going to really just, does Riot care? It's going to affect the growth, but does Riot care? No. In that sense, they probably don't. Obviously, like I said, this is too early to kind of say they hate amateurs, but I think based on what they're saying and they're releasing, it points towards, hey guys, we care about the money, so yeah, sorry amateurs, we're just here for the big bucks, not really here to mess around with the little amateurs that are trying to make a pro, and it sucks. Yep. It's really unfortunate.
Oh, I know.
So any like opinions from people players, amateur players?
It's just too fresh. Like they've stated that they're going to announce kind of more about this whole thing once the summer split comes around. They said they're going to be releasing more information about it. So all we know is that LCS teams are going to be keeping their spots moving forward, and there's going to be no more relegation. So how that affects amateur, we just don't know. We can only assume that there's going to be no more Challenger Series, and I guess maybe there will be Challenger Series, but there's not going to be any way for those Challenger teams to move into the LCS as like a group, unless the LCS team buys that team out.
Right, and that's the thing. I mean, LCS spots are expensive now. Right now, they're ridiculous.
It's ridiculous.
Once this franchising happens, imagine how much more expensive these spots will get, and how how out of reach for some organizations this price will be, and and I get it, right? Riot wants to grow, right? The organization wants to help these organizations grow, but it's like they're kind of making a cutoff line, right? It's almost like we want these teams to grow, but in order to be one of these teams, you have to either have a lot of money already or be at the pinnacle of the esport already. And I think that's kind of like the negative side of things, right? And obviously this brings more, we can just go on and go on regarding this topic, but honestly, I'm nervous, but I'm excited at the same time, because I do feel that, I don't think Riot's just going to let amateurs just kind of go under the bus. I really think maybe they'll release something where it can be beneficial for both the professionals themselves right now and the teams and the amateur scene, right?
Yep.
All right, so that being said, that's a touchy subject. Like I said, we can go on for days about it. So I want to move on to your predictions for the split coming up. Obviously, for now we have MSI going on, and SKT just destroyed Flashwebs. But let's focus on what's coming up, right? With this Dardoch trade with Xmithie, and COG and all these teams, that are going to be. I would assume some of these teams are going to be, especially the low tier, are going to restructure their teams, right, to try to be more competitive for this upcoming split. What are your I would say top 5 teams for this split?
You go first, because I'm going to kind of break it down further.
Okay, no problem. Okay. For top 5. So this is going to be a little bit biased because I am a C9 fan. All right, blue all day. So big EXT sneaky fan. So essentially, first place, C9. I generally do think that they're going to beat TSM this split. Obviously, last split, it's fair to say that TSM felt the fire under their buns. They, due to a misplay, unfortunately, they C9 lost. But I really do think they're back for redemption, right? So I would say first place for C9. TSM in a stud face, second place. I do think TSM is kind of losing that fire that they once had. Obviously, their performance at MSI was terrible. So, I mean, my thing is, how do they bounce back? And if they even do bounce back, right? Do they have another crappy start to the split? And if they do, I really do think that it's not going to be like previous splits where teams kind of let them come back. I feel like as the splits go on, the splits get more competitive, and it's more difficult for these teams to try to become better midpoint of the split. Third place, I'm going to say CLG. On paper, they look like a solid team, even though I've been very, very, very against them having Huhi on the team. I don't think he's. I do think there's better talent out there for them, and I do think they have the money and the ability to get one, but obviously they don't for some reason. But I'm going to say third place on paper. They look solid, and I do think that they're going to start off hot. So that's why they get the third place spot. Fourth place. This is a tricky one, right? Because this is a team that could be great, but it's still not at the level, right? And to that, I'm going to say Phoenix. Phoenix won this split. I'm not lying. If you didn't know about Phoenix won prior to this past split, now you know who the heck they are, right? Dark Meteos, that was like the meme going on. And my thing is, like, do you think that do they keep Meteos? Do they not keep Meteos? I don't know. I think that's going to be a big important part of overall their team. and I feel like they have the right staff and the right mindset to be able to become a great team in the LCS. Obviously, they've proven it. They've been top teams and all that. So that's my fourth place pick. Fifth place, I'm going to give it to. This one's tricky because this is a team that like I said, they're not bad, but they're not great, right? They're kind of in the middle of everything, and I think I'm going to have to go with. I think I'm going to have to go with FlyQuest on this one. I think FlyQuest, they're not an amazing team. Obviously, when they came in, you look at the roster, they're stacked, right? Some would say. But I do think that they're consistent enough in some regards to stay in the middle of the pack. I don't think they'll be an amazing team. I really feel that their players are kind of, seasoned. I really think that if they want to become a better team, I really think they need to do some roster changes. But I think overall, with what they have now and with what they showed in the split, I still feel like they can be a top 5 team. Therefore, I'm going to give them, the fifth place, at the end of the split. But overall, that's what I feel. I think that's going to be the top 5 teams at the end of the split. It's going to be an interesting split. It's going to be more competitive than last split for sure, and that's exciting from a spectator's perspective. So, how about you, Ben?
I think that I agree with you for the most part about everything. I think FlyQuest is going to take the 5th place spot. P1, I'm going to say P1 takes 3rd place with CLG in 4th because, like I said, I think CLG is going to have a pretty rocky start.
Okay.
Due to the fact they're just going to have to adapt to how Dardoch plays, and we don't know how he's going to do. So I think that's going to be a deciding factor. And P1 with Shady and Ryu, and I think they're going to be pretty good again. 3rd place, I already said, is P1. I think 2nd place. I think TSM will win the split. I'm going to kind of break it down. I'm going to have to disagree with you on that one.
That's fine. No, it's fine. We can disagree. That's fine.
I'm going to break it down. We agree on lots of things, but this is one that we don't. I'm not necessarily a TSM fan. I'm very sneaky, but I'm not picking TSM because they're my favorite team or whatever. I'm just going to purely base it off of how the lane matchups go. So I'm just going to break it down for you guys. So the top laner in the top lane for TSM, it's Haunter versus CLG's Darshan. I think it's a no-brainer. I think Haunter has proven that he is the best top laner in North America. Obviously, he didn't play very well versus Huni in the mid-season invitational, but I think he's up there in the top 5 top laners in the world. So I think there's no chance that Zion Spartan beats Haunter.
Right.
Darshan is not very strong at all, and that's why you see the memes that bring back Zion or Darshit. So I definitely give it to Haunter. In the jungle, Svenskeren versus Contracts. I'm going to give the edge to Contracts. Svenskeren's been off of his game. We all know that. He's a very good jungler. Obviously, he's proven that he has the mechanics to be the best jungler. He was rank 1 on the ladder. The only reason he's not anymore is because they had to leave for MSI, so he decayed. But he has proven that he can get to the top of the North American ladder. And I feel that Contracts has the edge though because he's just more composed and he's not making the early game mistakes that Svenskeren has made in the MSI and kind of late last season. In the mid lane, pretty tough. Bjergsen versus Jensen. I do think Bjergsen is the 2nd best mid laner in the world. I think he goes Taker, Bjergsen, Maple. However, I think Jensen's 4th. I think that Jensen is very good, but I think Bjergsen in experience and kind of maturity just outclasses Jensen, how calm he can be, and obviously mechanically, I think Bjergsen's champion pool is much better, and I think in that regards, I think Bjergsen outclasses Jensen. And then into the bot lane, I'm just going to go out on a limb here and predict that Doublelift will be playing the majority of the games. So Doublelift versus Sneaky, I think that mechanically Doublelift is a better player. It's going to be interesting to see how Doublelift will do. And as everybody knows that the kind of the shot calling of TSM has kind of switched to Haunter and Svenskeren a little bit. And I think that with Doublelift focusing more on his mechanics, I think he's going to do very well. Versus Sneaky, it's going to be very close. They both Sneaky's a very quiet player, very good out of laning phase. Obviously Sneaky in lane and stuff. I think Doublelift kind of has the edge in AD carry, but not by much. And then support, it's not even close. Xmithie is
by far
Biofrost. And,
by far.
I think Xmithie is the best support in the LCS and one of the best supports in the world. So in that regard, I think overall the bot lane goes to TSM. or C9, sorry, just because Sneaky and Xmithie have been together for a very long time. Biofrost and Doublift have been there, and you have Wild Circle in the mix, but Xmithie is, I think, the best player on C9. So
Right.
in that regard, I think TSM kind of wins, but at the same time, it's going to be very close this season.
Oh yeah.
Both go to Worlds, obviously.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's going to be an interesting split to see, man. I really think that as the splits, progress, teams get better. I really do think that now teams are starting to understand, right, that you can't be mediocre anymore. You can't, like, it sounds fucked up, right? And I don't want to, like, talk smack about any team, but you can't be Team Liquid. You're not going to be Team Liquid. You won't be able to get away with it the way they did. It's
system.
Yeah.
We're not going to talk about that.
Yeah, no. But I'm just saying it's going to be an interesting splits to watch, for the coming years. Teams will just get better, and I'm excited. It's from a fan's perspective, right? It's exciting to see these teams become better and better every split, right? And I think that's great that these teams are starting to understand that you need to be consistent, right, to be good, not even just in your region, but to be good in the international world, right? And I think the more consistency and the more understanding that these teams have, the better we'll do, even internationally, right, with North America. But obviously, franchising might be a good and a bad, right? With this whole new system that will be implemented in the middle of, or the summer of 2018, or spring, right? Summer or spring?
It'll be spring.
So yeah, I'm excited to see how it plans out for next split. But those are my predictions. So mark my words, right? We should make a gentleman's bet. TSM or C9. I take C9. You take TSM. Is that the way we're gonna do it?
Okay.
Okay.
That's what I think. So it is our first episode. I'm not sure if anyone is in the chat, but Wolfie, if you're still here, or Recon, if you're here, if you guys have any questions for us, League of Legends related, other esports related, anything, we'll give you guys a couple of minutes to see if you guys have any questions. I don't know how many people are here that are able to watch question, or watch to ask a question. So we'll give you guys a couple of minutes, and Eddie will give you some background about kind of how our podcast is going to go in the meantime.
Right. So essentially, I noticed just before I touch into that, I noticed Wolfie said that there's a little bit of lag. I think that's just to do with unfortunately there was Photoshop open while I was streaming. Therefore, I think that's what a little bit of lag happened. But without a doubt, for next episode, we'll make sure that's figured out and we test it before we go live. That being said, so the way our podcast will work, right? Little background on it. It's going to be esports related. Myself and Ben, being in esports, we really enjoy discussing stuff. So therefore, we'll touch up on essentially every esport that we can and go around the table and make sure that we get each other's opinions on the topic. We're gonna have two formats. First week, this would be our first week, right? Obviously, where myself and Ben discuss the topics. Then the second week, be next week, we bring on a guest, right? And we discuss a specific topic, and we have, hopefully a face cam with him or her. And we discuss the topics that we have on the table, and we just, like I said, go around and give our opinion, right? Essentially, it's going to be like two format. Like I said, for this week was just myself and Ben. Next week will be a guest, and then the following week will be myself and Ben, and then so on and so forth, right? That being said, we're more than welcome to anybody that wants to come on board, and maybe they're organization owner, or they have this brand, or they have this team that is doing essentially, if you're interested in coming on board, and being part of the podcast for an episode, contact us, to either on the Third Sense Twitter, and those links you can find on the down below, and our panels. You can just click, and you should be able to go straight through it. But essentially, that's the way the format's going to work. One question. All right, you want to take? You want to ask? Okay.
Yeah. So this kind of hits both of us because we both started.
In COD. Yeah.
So,
all right.
Recon Death asks, will COD make a big comeback next year with boots on the ground, or will it continue to fall?
Ooh.
Want me to go first?
Yeah, go first. I have some juicy stuff, so I'll let you go first.
Okay. We're going to try to keep this short because we want to end within the next 10 minutes. So,
right.
Essentially, I think that it will make a comeback. I think that It kind of defeats the whole notion of jetpacks and jetpackers. I think that it's going to bring some really good competition. Obviously, without uplink in the rotation, it's going to be a rotation of capture the flag, search and destroy, and probably hardpoint, and maybe domination. They haven't released anything about competitive yet, so maybe there's going to be one more new game mode or something. But I don't think there's going to be no uplink. So I'm going to miss uplink, of course, but I love playing uplink and watching uplink, but I think it's going to be really good for Call of Duty. I think that the pros are going to want to grind the game more because all you hear now is the pros saying that they hate the game and they wish it would just already be next year. And I think Black Ops 3 was the best out of all of the kind of jetpack games. I really liked AW2, but for competitive, Black Ops 3 was definitely the best. So I think you'll see teams like Optic stay together and FaZe stay together to kind of give it,
right.
If they don't succeed in COD Champs, to give it one more year with the boots on the ground. That's where everybody started. You've seen players like Scump who have come from dominating boots on the ground to dominating jetpacks and now going back to boots on the ground. I don't think the trend's going to stop. So in my opinion, I think it will get better for competitive. As far as like consumerism goes, I think it's obviously always going to be good. It's Call of Duty, but I think you're going to draw in a lot more of the kind of, older men kind of who played, Call of Duty 4, Modern Warfare 4, fun. I think that's
the OGs.
Back.
Yeah, the OGs.
Just like MWR did. So what do you think? Nice and
so overall, I'm going to say yes. There's going to be a big support for this, and there's going to be a gruesome amount of people that are going to play this game competitively. Do I feel that this is going to be a crazy growth where people are going to be like, everybody knows COD? No. For the fact that
it's going to be better.
It will be better, but my thing is, like, I don't think it's fair to say. I'm not quite sure what he meant by comeback specifically, right? But I think in order for Call of Duty to do a massive comeback, we'll just do after this Call of Duty that's going to, World War II Call of Duty comes out. After this, what's the next title, right? That title needs to be boots on the ground. If it's not boots on the ground, it's just going to go back down, right? Any potential growth that they could have had, it's going to go down the drain again, and that's essentially, where I feel that they stand. I feel like it's going to be really good because it's going to bring a lot of the old players back, and it's going to get rid of this whole, like, people say unskilled, type of play skill, players that essentially use jetpacks to play the game, and it's cheap. Nobody likes it. So I really feel it's going to be good for the time being, right? But I think the bigger question is, after this game comes, is over, what's next, right? I think and obviously we're looking, over a year from now, but I think in order for Call of Duty to do a crazy comeback, they need to make sure that the games that come out are always boots on the ground. I think they tried this, it didn't work for competitive, but how do we get the developers to understand that, right? Obviously, unfortunately, Call of Duty competitive is only a fraction of the revenue that they make, right? For these companies. But overall, I'm going to say yes, but it won't be a substantial amount of growth unless then the game after this is also boots on the ground.
I just want to point out right now that I'm looking at Twitch right now, and that The Binding of Isaac, it's like a little arcade game, has more viewers than, and Social Eating have more viewers than Infinite Warfare. So, I mean, that's insane. When you look at games like Poker, Fantasy 10, even Call of Duty Black Ops 3 has more viewers than Infinite Warfare.
There was another question.
That blows my mind.
Yeah, no, I agree. Another question by Livestream Stalker. What is that, man?
Okay.
Will Sledgehammer implement a game mode similar to Uplink in World War II?
I think that Sledgehammer will do. I think there needs to be like a fourth game type. I think that CTF, S&D, and Hardpoint is fine, but I think Uplink was out of the four. I think Uplink and S&D obviously were the most entertaining to watch. CTF, I mean, it is what it is. It's a good competitive game. It's not really as fun to watch, but it's kind of impossible to do Uplink. The only thing that I could possibly think of them doing is kind of the same system as Uplink, except obviously you don't have to jump into the portal. So it's kind of like the portal's like either in jumping distance or on the ground, or some type of kind of someone has to be carrying something to a certain spot and they won't be able to shoot their gun, unlike Capture the Flag where you can. Kind of a protect the carry type of thing. I'm not sure. I've read rumors that Domination will be coming back to competitive, but I think that's AIDS. I think that's really bad. I think that's terrible.
Yeah.
But I mean, if it will be just the three of those game modes, I think that's kind of fine. But at the same time, I really like Uplink, so hopefully they see that Uplink's popular, so that they can kind of implement a new system of Uplink kind of thing into the game.
Right. To add on to that, I agree. I don't think they'll implement something. If they do, it'll be very different. I don't think it'll be a blinky ask maybe, just because of the game and the way the where I'd stated. It'd be kind of weird to have this like futuristic game be in this time, right? I think if they do, the more reasonable, I think, I guess based on the timeline where this takes place, at domination. But I agree, Ben. I think it's kind of difficult sometimes to play that game. Not difficult, but it's kind of boring. At times the games are usually not. It's not interesting because it's like you get two caps and then that's it. All you have to do is hold it. There's not, unless it goes down to the wire, but it's very few times where that happens. So from a viewer's perspective, I don't think domination will be the best game type to go to from a viewer's perspective, right? But to answer your question, I don't think so. I think we have to wait and see what they announce. But overall, I do think that something like Unblink will be kind of difficult to implement into this game just because of the time it's stated.
There's just no way to tell yet because they haven't released any multiplayer information either. So
Right. I agree. It's too early. Obviously, I saw the trailers that they posted, but it doesn't really say much, right? It just kind of shows boots on the ground. Essentially, that's what they're showing. But once they do, don't worry, we'll make a video about it. Once they do, and we'll give our opinion on it, and make sure you guys are in here to ask more questions. But with that said, I think
I got a question off stream. Not in the chat, but let me just read it. It says, opinions on the Overwatch League, competitive league.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I said, opinions on Overwatch competitive league.
Okay. A lot of issues have been going on with the Overwatch League. Overwatch, was it Blizzard?
Yeah.
Apparently, Blizzard. I've seen a lot of teams take their teams, the organizations take their teams out of the competition because they stay.
Just wait, this is like a whole episode. Just wait.
Yeah. So overall, it's terrible. It's losing money, and nobody cares. It's becoming irrelevant.
I think Overwatch is very hard to spectate, also. So we can talk about that another time. Thanks for the question, though.
One more question.
Do you think that Destiny 2 will make it to competitive? No. Crucible is terrible. Destiny is too much like Halo, and the only reason I or people play Destiny is for the single player. So short answer is no. I do.
I mean, I saw a lot of people were hyped for it. Do I think it'll be competitive? No, I think this is just a casual game. Unless they do this crazy like push for it. Yeah, but I really doubt it's gonna be a competitive game just because No, I used to watch a streamer though. I'm not quite sure his name, but I used to just watch it because I thought it was really cool to watch. But overall, I don't think it's just single player mode. Yeah, I think that's why people buy the game. But overall, I don't think it'll be a competitive game.
Well, not single player mode. It's PvP or
PvP, right?
PvE. So you and your friends do missions and stuff together. But I don't think it's going to be competitive. The Crucible, the mode in the closest we had to that in Destiny 1 was something called Trials of Osiris, and even that was faulty.
Okay.
The way the multiplayer was played. So I think short answer, no, I do not.
Yeah, and to agree, on you, just it looks like Halo, and we both know how Halo has gone with the last Worlds event that they host.
All right, guys.
Thank you guys for watching. Unfortunately, we gotta go. It's only an hour show. Obviously, we'll be here next week, same time, discussing a new topic with a special guest. But besides that, thank you guys for watching. If you guys, little plug, if you guys need, if you guys need any social media links, down below, or they'll be in the chat. But at the end of the day, thank you guys for watching. If you guys need any designs, any want to look like us, nice and sexy, like the way we look, make sure to check out By Impuls. Great designs that they make, and they're always there to help out people grow and help them look at their best. With that being said, I'm out.
Peace, guys. Thank you.
Later, guys.
Have a good day, Eddie. See you, Eddie.
Yeah, you too.